50 cents. That's all I spent to get rid of the ants in my kitchen for good. I didn't use spray. I didn't call an exterminator. I used 2 ingredients already sitting in my pantry. I'm going to show you exactly how much to use and why it works in under an hour. If you have an ant trail crossing your kitchen right now, this video solves it before today ends. I've watched the same mistake for years in people who write to me for advice. The problem isn't the ant you see walking across your counter right now. It's the invisible trail that ant left behind for the rest of the colony to follow. That's why store-bought spray kills the 5 ants you see today, and tomorrow 20 more show up. You spend money, kill a few, and the entire colony keeps living under the floor or behind the wall. That cycle of buying, killing a little, and buying again is exactly what keeps pest companies rich. My grandmother never had that expense in her house because she attacked the problem differently. She never killed the ant she saw. She used that same ant as a messenger back to the colony. Let me explain the trick, and I know it sounds too simple to actually work. I mix equal parts baking soda and sugar, adding just enough warm water to form a thick paste. I use 1 tablespoon of baking soda, 1 tablespoon of sugar, and water added slowly while stirring. I keep stirring until the mixture is smooth and not too runny, almost like toothpaste. I put that paste on an old jar lid or a small plate I no longer use for eating. I place it exactly where I've seen the ant trail passing through my kitchen. I don't hide it. I don't push it into a corner where nobody would notice it. I put it right in their path, because I need them to find it fast. Here's the part that sounds like science, but is actually pretty simple to understand. Sugar is the bait. Ants can't tell baking soda apart from sugar once they're mixed like this. Their sense of smell detects the dominant sweet compound and pulls them in without hesitation. But baking soda has an alkaline pH that reacts inside the ant's acidic digestive system. That reaction produces gas inside the ant's body. And here's the key part. The ant doesn't die instantly. And counterintuitive as it sounds, that's exactly what I need. An ant that dies the moment it eats never makes it back to the colony. An ant that takes a while to die does make it back, leaving the same pheromone trail behind. I use that trail to guide the rest of the colony straight to the same plate. In simple terms, I turn the first ant into the one that invites its whole colony to that spot. Nobody paid me to tell you this, and you don't need to buy anything special online. I tried it myself first, in my own kitchen, before filming it to show you. I left it out on a Tuesday afternoon, right where the trail crossed toward the wall. That was near the baseboard where I'd seen ants going in and out all week. In the first 20 minutes, not much happens, and I want you to know that in advance. This is exactly the point where most people give up, thinking the trick failed. I saw 2 or 3 ants approach, touch the mixture with their antennae, and pause. Then they started eating. That's completely normal ant behavior, nothing to worry about. An ant explores before it trusts, the same way we would with unfamiliar food. This is where you need patience, because this method isn't built to kill fast like spray. It's built to kill well, going after the root of the problem instead of the symptom. At the 30-minute mark, I started noticing something different happening around the plate. The number of ants around it had multiplied, and not because there was more trail than before. The first ants that ate had already gone back to the colony and returned with reinforcements. That's exactly what I expected to happen at this stage of the process. I call this the fire test. More ants at 30 minutes than at 5 means it's working. If you see fewer ants instead, the trail you picked may not be the main one. Try moving the plate a few inches toward wherever ant traffic looks the heaviest. 2 or 3 hours in, I noticed the traffic toward the plate starting to slow down. Not because the ants had wandered off somewhere else, but for a different reason entirely. The whole colony was starting to feel the effect of what its messengers brought back. By the next day, in most cases like mine, the trail across my kitchen was simply gone. I never found a dead, visible ant the way you would with commercial spray. They just stopped showing up, because the problem got solved at its source. It happened inside the nest, not on top of my counter where I only saw the symptom. If your problem is tiny kitchen ants, the kind near sugar, or breadcrumbs, this works as is. I use the exact same ratio, 1 small plate, placed at the busiest traffic point. If your problem is bigger ants, like carpenter ants or ones coming in from the garden, adjust. I place 2 or 3 small plates along different points of the outdoor trail instead of 1. Those colonies tend to be much bigger and spread out, so multiple points work better. For garden ants, the same paste works placed near the visible entrance of the anthill. There, you'll want to double the amount, since rain or watering can dissolve it faster. Check the plate daily and refresh it if it dries out or gets too wet from the weather. If this works for you, leave a second plate out again about a week later just in case. Sometimes a smaller secondary colony takes longer to show itself after the first round. Preventing with a second treatment is a lot cheaper than waiting for the problem to return. I want to be honest about something almost nobody mentions when they talk about this trick. Not every colony reacts on exactly the same timeline, and that's completely normal. It depends on colony size, how close the nest is to where you placed the plate, and the season. In my case, it took a full day, but I've heard from people for whom it took 2 or 3 days. In houses with bigger colonies, it can take up to a week to see the full effect show up. What matters is keeping the plate there with fresh mixture, as long as ants keep visiting. As long as there's traffic, the message keeps reaching the colony, day after day. I know this sounds strange, and I understand if you doubt something this simple can work. I doubted it too the first time my grandmother taught it to me many years ago. Back then, we still used commercial products at home for kitchen pests, just like most people. What convinced me wasn't the explanation, it was seeing the result with my own eyes. That same fire test I just described to you is what turned me into a believer. Since then, I haven't bought a single ant spray for my own kitchen, not once. One last thing before I move on. Store any leftover mixture in a closed container. Keep it out of reach of small children who might mistake it for real sugar at a glance. In the amounts used on the plate, it poses no real risk to kids or pets whatsoever. Baking soda only causes that reaction when eaten in the tiny, concentrated amount an ant ingests. That's far less than what a child or pet would ever touch by accident. Try this out this week with what's already sitting in your own pantry right now. Tell me in the comments how many hours or days it took for the trail to disappear for you. Like I said, not every colony reacts at the same speed, so I'm curious about your results. Let me know which part of your house you tried it in when you leave that comment. Now let me tell you how I perfected the exact ratio, because my first tries weren't great. The first time, I used too much water, and the mixture turned runny and leaked out. It dried into a hard crust around the edges that ants couldn't eat easily anymore. The second time, I used too little water, and it turned dry and clumpy instead. The sweet smell wasn't released strongly enough to attract ants from a distance. The ratio that finally worked, the one I use every single time now, is very specific. 1 tablespoon of baking soda, 1 tablespoon of sugar, and warm water added slowly. I stir with a small spoon until it turns into a thick cream that still looks moist and shiny. That moisture matters because the sweet smell travels better through the air when it's damp. A completely dry mixture just doesn't carry the same pull for ants passing nearby. I also learned after helping out in different houses that plate placement matters just as much. At first, I made the mistake of putting the plate in the middle of the kitchen floor. I figured more ants would spot it there, but that's not how ants actually move around. Ants avoid open central spaces whenever they can, sticking close to edges and walls instead. They follow straight lines they already know, hugging baseboards and furniture edges. That's why I now always place the plate right against the wall or baseboard. I put it directly on the existing traffic line instead of hoping ants wander somewhere new. The time of day you place the mixture also makes a noticeable difference, I've found. When I placed it early in the morning before the kitchen warmed up with daily use, traffic was slow. The colony probably hadn't sent scouts out looking for food yet at that early hour. When I placed it late in the afternoon, right before dark, results came much faster. In my experience, that's when kitchen ants are most active, hunting for leftover food, scraps. The first ants showed up in under 10 minutes instead of the usual 20. Let me tell you about one specific case I helped with, because it illustrates this well. A neighbor asked for help after weeks of buying spray with zero lasting results. Ants kept showing up every morning in the same corner of her kitchen, near the trash can. When I saw the situation, I understood the problem right away, immediately. That meant the colony never received the signal that food was available at a fixed spot. So it kept sending fresh scouts out every single day in an endless, frustrating loop. I explained she needed to let some ants eat and return instead of killing them on site. We placed the baking soda and sugar mixture together that same afternoon, right there. The next day, she wrote to tell me the traffic had dropped noticeably already. By day 3, she wasn't seeing a single ant in that corner of her kitchen anymore. That case confirmed something I'd suspected from the very beginning of doing this. People think nothing works against ants, but that's not because natural methods are weaker. It's because we keep applying the same flawed logic of killing what we see right now. Spray gives you the instant satisfaction of watching ants die in front of your eyes. But that same satisfaction is exactly what sabotages the long-term result you actually want. It kills the very messengers you need alive to solve the problem at its root. Let me walk you through the variations I use depending on the specific type of ant you have. Not every species behaves exactly the same way, so small adjustments can help a lot. With tiny ants, barely the size of a pinhead, usually near honey jars or spilled juice, the standard mixture works with 0 changes, and they often react even faster than others. Their pull toward sugar is even stronger than what you see in other common species. With medium-sized, dark brown ants, usually drawn to grease or protein sources like meat, I sometimes add a tiny pinch of peanut butter to the mixture for those specific ants. They respond better to bait combining something sweet with a touch of fat. With carpenter ants, which are bigger and often signal a moisture problem in wood, I use the same mixture but set out several plates at once instead of just one. Those colonies tend to be much larger and more spread out across a wider area. A single feeding point simply isn't enough to reach the whole population of ants. In the garden, when the anthill is visible as a small mound of dirt, I place it differently. I avoid putting the plate directly on top of the mound itself. That can scare them off. Instead, I place it about a foot away, right along the path ants use to come and go. Putting mixture directly on the entrance sometimes makes ants avoid that area completely. Placing it along their normal path lets them find it naturally, like just another food source. Before wrapping up, let me answer something people ask me all the time about this trick. If it's this simple and this cheap, why doesn't everyone already know about it? Honestly, everyone did know generations ago, before a whole industry got built around this. That industry sells us more expensive, less permanent fixes for problems our grandparents solved. This isn't secret knowledge in some mysterious sense. It's just knowledge we stopped passing down. We started trusting store products more than the methods that actually worked at home. Here's another detail I learned through trial and error over quite a bit of time. What do you do when the plate dries out completely before the colony gets the full message? At first, when I saw the mixture had dried and hardened on the surface, I just added water. I thought that would reactivate the bait, but it actually diluted the baking soda too much. That left a top layer of mostly sugar sitting over a more concentrated base underneath. Ants ended up eating only the top layer without getting the full dose they needed. Now, when the plate dries out, I scrape the surface with a spoon to expose fresh mixture. Or I just prepare a brand new batch if more than 2 or 3 days have already passed. A fresh mixture always works better than one that's only been partially reactivated. I also want to tell you about white sugar versus brown sugar since someone asked me recently. I decided to test it myself before answering instead of just guessing at the answer. With white sugar, the result was basically the same as what I described from the start. Ant traffic appeared within the first 20 minutes, just like in my original test. With brown sugar, which has a stronger smell from the molasses content, results came faster. Traffic showed up in just under 10 minutes during my test. A noticeable difference. That said, the gap wasn't big enough to call one option clearly better than the other. If you have both at home, I'd lean toward brown sugar, but white sugar works perfectly fine. The final result, measured by how long the trail took to fully disappear, was nearly identical. Another question I get a lot is whether this works the same in very humid or very dry climates. Plenty of people who write to me live in places where climate is a real factor for any trick. In humid climates, the mixture tends to stay fresh and sticky for longer periods of time. That actually helps, since it doesn't dry out fast and stays appealing to ants for more hours. In very dry climates, the mixture can harden within just a few hours, especially near heat. That's especially true if the plate sits near a sunny window or close to the stove. In those cases, check the plate every 4 or 5 hours and add a bit of water if needed. Or simply place it in a cooler, shadier spot somewhere else in the kitchen instead. I also want to give you an honest warning about expectations because this isn't instant magic. This method doesn't wipe out the queen immediately, especially in large, established colonies. Colonies that have lived near your house for months or even years may need repeat treatments. You might need to repeat this 2 or 3 times over several weeks before seeing full results. What I can promise, from personal experience and from cases I've helped solve directly, is this. Every application weakens the colony's population cumulatively, even without an instant fix. Each messenger that returns with the signal helps weaken the entire colony a little more. For anyone with small children or curious pets at home, here's an extra layer of reassurance. Beyond what I already explained about ingredient safety, you can add one simple extra step. Place the plate inside a small box with a side hole just big enough for one ant to pass through. An empty matchbox or a small recycled cardboard box works perfectly fine for this purpose. This lets ants access the mixture freely while keeping curious hands or paws away from it. This step isn't required at all, since the baking soda amount poses no real risk as explained. But personally, it gives me extra peace of mind when small children are crawling around the kitchen. Before I wrap this up, let me summarize the whole process for you in just a few simple lines. Mix 1 tablespoon of baking soda with 1 tablespoon of sugar in a small bowl or lid. Add warm water slowly until you get a thick, moist paste, almost like toothpaste. Place it on a small plate right against the wall, along the ant trail you already know. Then wait. In the first 20 minutes, you'll see little movement, and that's completely normal. At the 30-minute mark, you'll notice a clear increase in ant activity around the plate. Within 1 to 3 days, depending on colony size, the whole trail should disappear. Try this out this week with what you already have, without spending a single extra dollar. Tell me in the comments how many hours or days it took to disappear in your specific case. Let me know which part of your house you tried it in, and what kind of ant you were dealing with. Not every colony reacts at exactly the same speed, so I'm genuinely curious about your results. I want to use what you share to help the next person who writes to me with this same problem.